Welcome. Today I'm going to demonstrate an updated pour-over technique. I've been using this technique for about a year, but I've been a bit neglectful about updating my online recommendation. We're going to brew a lovely Kenya Kirinyaga from Regalia Coffee Roasting Company in New York City using a niche grinder and a Kalita wave. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce a small modification to the Kalita. I've been using this small cutout of a mesh tea strainer to put at the bottom of the Kalita underneath the filter. I do this because I find without the mesh strainer, every third or fourth or fifth brew, the flow rate through the coffee bed will slow down precipitously, probably because the filter is sagging and clogging one or two of the holes at the bottom of the Kalita. Ever since I've begun using the tea strainer, my brews have been much faster and more consistent overall. So I've already ground the coffee. I'm going to wet the filter. We'll tare the scale. We'll pour 20 grams coffee grounds. Went a little bit over. We'll shake it slightly to level it, tare the scale, and we are ready to go. Going to begin with a pre-wet pour of 3:1. So since we're using 20 grams of grounds, that's going to be a 60 gram pre-wet. As you can see, we've got a few bubbles. I'm going to give it a little spin. Those bubbles are indicating that there's areas of the coffee bed that are still getting wet all this way into the pre-wet. One option is to use a spoon or some other instrument to very gently dig into those areas to force them to get wet. And if you see all the bubbles disappear, that's a pretty good indicator that you've got all the grounds wet. I'm using a 45-second pre-wet from the moment I begin pouring until the moment I begin the second pour. Pre-wet looks pretty good. The grind setting on the niche is number 40, if that's meaningful to some people out there. And we're ready to go with the first pour. The first pour, I'm going to pour up to 210 grams total. And then after that, there'll be one more pour up to 340 grams for a 17:1 ratio. We're using the Fellow Stag kettle. I really like the Fellow Stag as well as the Bonavita that has the flow restrictor, as both kettles are pretty good at creating a nearly vertical stream of water and can pour from a pretty high height without creating splashing. So I recommend pouring from a constant height and finding the highest spot you can pour from such that you don't get any splashing noise as the water hits the coffee slurry. So the slurry has drained about halfway, which is my cue to do the second pour. You can see if you go a little too high, you get the splashing noise. So I tend to pour just below the threshold where the splashing occurs. Try to keep a constant height. So we're at 340. Going to give it a gentle spin and let the slurry drain. I've been using this technique with the V60, with the Stag X brewer, and with the Kalita, with very similar results. All three brewers tend to extract to within 1% extraction yield of each other. I'm not necessarily partial to any one of the brewers. The Stag definitely keeps the slurry temperature a little hotter than the others. I like the Kalita because it's wider, more open. It's a little bit easier to see what's going on inside of it than the Stag. I don't use the V60 quite as much as I used to, but I do think that the results coming from all three brewers are, within 90% in terms of quality relation to each other. With a quality Kenya using the niche, typical extraction yield is around 24%. Occasionally I'll find a Kenya that can get up to about 25%. Same goes for Ethiopians. Other coffees with the niche will range between 21 and 24%, but the grinder is pretty reliable when it comes to creating very high extractions. This is the boring part of the coffee brewing process where there's not much you can do. What I'm looking for at the end is that the walls of the filter are relatively clean of grounds other than a little bit of fines caked on, and the final coffee bed should be very flat, indicating that the water passed through the bed evenly without channeling or favoring one area over the others. And there it is. Nice flat bed. All right. Thanks for joining. I hope this was useful. Feel free to leave a comment. Thank you.